It's Aurum Gallery. Lovely, savoury moments in art. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm really good. I'm trying to keep myself busy.
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you first and foremost.
Yeah.
Ask you that we need to know at Aurum. Is your dad's name Francis? I
Yes. Well, possibly.
I just
Yeah.
realised that your second name, your real name, is Tim Bacon.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Why be Francis?
Well, who knows? Who knows? Distant relative somewhere. I mean, that'd be pretty neat if it was.
Yeah. Tell me, because for all of us at Aurum Gallery, firstly, thank you for obviously we procured your work last year. You are these unknown artists. I mean, we know you in London. You know, we have an association, I mean, an associate that we both respect very much. That we'll talk about. I've got about 30 minutes.
Hmm.
I think for anyone that doesn't know Epod, number one, Epod, welcome to Aurum Gallery online.
Pleasure.
What we're talking about, and I can see that you've got a very, very lovely Stussy cat there. It would seem to have been a peculiar
Yeah. Yeah. He's sat on my stormtrooper at the moment. Yeah.
sound of stormtrooper. Very good, sir. I like your taste. Just tell me, where did the name Epod come from?
Well, that's a bit of a mad one, really, because when I used to write long time ago, I used to write as dope ages and ages ago, and it came to a point where I was looking to sort of change up my style, and sort of do things in a different way, and I wrote it on a window, dope on a window, and it seemed to look better the other way round.
Of course. There we go.
So, so it was like, I've ever since then I've sort of done the sort of the full stop and the epod, and it's kind of stuck.
I've thought about the concept of Ecrypt, which was price. It was an anagram.
Yeah,
It was doing Ecrypt.
yeah, yeah,
That really works. I like that.
yeah. Well, it was never sort of intended to sort of stay long, but it kind of did, and it kind of came at a time when I was sort of reversing the way I was doing stuff and looking at things in a different way and trying to change things and trying to be a little bit more sort of original with my stuff. So it kind of just stuck, and I started to make it sort of part of what I did, really.
Mm.
Um,
We spoke quite a lot,
mm,
and my whole thing is about our ethos at Aurum Gallery is not just about having, super high end artists, which we do have. I'm
yeah.
also really, because of that kind of graffiti writer's mentality, if you like, or slightly, I don't know, visionary or entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, mad as a box of frogs would probably be the better idea. But the idea of having your art, in this situation at the gallery, because it's very unknown, but for me, there is something under the surface about a guy that's reinvented himself. As every graffiti writer, we start with this idea of style, which we learn very early on, and we reverse engineer at any given point about what we really like. And I think that we have mutual artists that we respect, but we also have the masters that we respect. And there's two people that come to mind when I think about your work. In a very, if Philadelphia had a lighter cheese, it would be called, Frank Zetta Light. I do.
Yeah.
I look at I look at some of the colorist stuff.
Mm,
I mean, I think someone like Mode we spoke about who's a complete true master. For me, there's no one that paints the human body as good as he does.
I absolutely agree
From
that.
a
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
honest point of view, but I do see a lot of your futurism within the work, but influence from Frank Franzetta's work. Any of you that aren't familiar with Frank Franzetta's work, there are two people that I looked at back then. Frank Franzetta's an oil painter, very famous, 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. But when you look at Boris, what he was doing with an airbrush,
Mm,
nothing on
yeah.
Frank Franzetta's work.
No,
It's chalk and
no.
cheese. But people
Oh,
think
totally.
it is the same thing, and it's not. It is. Um, and I think that the idea of your also Tom Rockwell, was it Tom Rockwell? Rockwell's work. Sorry, Tom Rockwell's actually a drum and bass artist I love. But Rockwell, his work,
Yeah.
was influential. Can you tell me a little bit? My audience, which are predominantly very balanced in Asia, of being expats that have a love for the arts, but also a new Asian market of new artists that really and new people and clients that to explain what your concept of your art is.
Yeah. Well, I think the main kind of drive for me and my work, and has always been really, is kind of it's the nostalgic kind of that kind of, and as you mentioned, Frazetta, and for me, I kind of put myself back as a kid and what I was really influenced in and sort of growing up. And no matter what I do, it always tends to sort of go back to that because it was such a big kind of passion for me. And it was, as a kid, I would, I was very into cinema and things like that. And I would be sort of constantly looking at who created these kind of worlds, these worlds that I was sort of so fascinated in, as growing up. And it was guys like, Mobius, Chris Foss, Sid Mead. They're all
Chris Foss, my
creative.
God, you just hit a real big bell for me. I mean, Chris Foss,
Yeah.
was Foss the one that did all of the stuff on the Yes album? Was it the Yes album? No, it was something.
I think that was Foss he did a lot of the sci-fi kind of covers to the novels and things. Roger Dean was the guy who did the
Roger
Yes covers.
Dean, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, and
I
again,
always got those two mixed up for some reason. Roger
Yeah, well,
Dean
there
and
was-
Foss.
yeah, that's right. They did a lot of the sort of sci-fi fantasy kind of covers and artwork. And for me, they were the sort of unsung heroes, those guys, because they sort of created all these worlds that have influenced so many people. And I think there's a lot of that kind of influenced in my work, especially the sort of color, the palette, the sort of the distant worlds, but keeping it quite familiar as well. And I think that was probably one of the biggest kind of influences in my work right now. But there's obviously, drawing in influence from graffiti and fashion and it's all kind of a big kind of combination of my sort of influences. But the overarching one, I would say, would be those guys really. The guys that sort of created these. They may have been record cover designers or production designers on films, but they had that ability to just create something that that no one really knew who did it, but they were always there, and you can just see so much influence. And
I mean, the thing as pioneers, it's always the pioneers that suffer. I've always felt that within the arts. And I think if those guys were alive now, in that respect of what the impact of their work, I don't quite get off on Stick Boy the same way, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean? It's like the impact of the work is so powerful that the sheer depth of it. I look at graffiti as this thing which is the idea of one-dimensional to two-dimensional to three-dimensional on the form of the paper, two-dimensional on the paper, then three-dimensional in the mind, and then four-dimensional, and then actually you now have 5D where we're moving and bending letter form.
Yeah.
What I love about that is that when we do turn it back the normal way and we see the depth of those layers, there's such an appreciation for the 5D, if you like, the way that we move back, whether it's character driven or whether it's letter driven, whether it's peta or whether it's mode. For me, the idea of what's been created in that depth field, these guys were doing this. It's almost like saying, God, can you imagine what he would have done if he had Montana? Jesus Christ. You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing to realise. Well, no, they didn't. It's all theoretical. However, when I think about how, Matisse, the cutouts of how that stuff happened, if he wasn't immobilised to be able to start cutting stuff with scissors and cutting and pasting, which was something which I went through very early on. I went through stencil work when it wasn't even stencil work, for example. It was Vogue letters on shirts. You had color three, three rectangle panels of just mystified color through electrojet, which
Yeah, yeah,
meant, you know what I mean. That we knew that the aerosol viscosity wouldn't work on cotton; it would just go up. But we would work out what kind of fabric paint can stick to it. You know what I mean? And all this other stuff. But I think what you've got, I love what you have with. I can see the influence, but I also see this rhetoric thing
mm,
I love about it. And the new
yeah,
pictures that you're sending to the gallery or you've already sent, I think, you know, you have a home with us now, and I'm glad that you. But it's obviously a patient game for us because we're looking at breaking an artist like yourself.
mm,
And believe me, they have difficulty with, they have difficulty with people like Bile. They have difficulty with, with certain artists. They have certain difficulty with artists because their time hasn't so much come for us yet.
yeah. Sure,
What's
sure,
great
sure.
about the space is that it is this amazing space that, as a founder, I'm an artist. I'm not this, we have bank mentality where we're, hey, gotta get in and out, and we've got to try and roll this over and flip this really quickly.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think even
yeah.
so, something like the background of what you're looking at now, I'm looking at this girl who has this very silhouetted image and this kind of distant sun burning away.
Well, I think the sort of the main kind of thing for me, really. I mean, I spent a long time not really taking what I was doing as seriously as I do now. And I think, I don't know, I had a trip to Tokyo probably about 6 years ago, something like that. And the whole kind of human tech thing just really kind of resonated with me, and I could see a connection with a lot of stuff that I was doing, and a real message to that as well. And that's really the kind of the theme with the portrait stuff, is that it's that kind of organic connection with the tech side of things, and that's why there's a lot of the cables and the kind of the shards and the sort of tech kind of you know themed stuff, the circuit board kind of thing. And again, I think the theme is similar with most of the kind of portraiture stuff that I do. It's like that inner soul reaching out kind of thing, and that's the whole kind of theme, I would say. And that's where we get the shards kind of just emerging, and a lot of my sort of portraits are kind of, they've got that kind of sort of retro-futuristic kind of look about them.
Is
And
this thing with triangles that you're fascinated with? I always see in your work. Is this kind of idea of like this? For me, is I'm a barking up the wrong tree, but I have this idea of this future machine triangle slotting through the sky in the horizon. And of course, obviously, there's lots of things about black triangles, which have happened, other sightings on black triangles, which I was fascinated by the way 10 years ago. I was also fascinated by my friends in Nevada. I have a friend who regularly tells me he watches UFOs take off all day long. They just go up through the airport, covered by the airport in Nevada. He says, "Look what happens." I'm like, really? I'm like, "Give me the number of your drug dealer." He's like, "Don't worry about it."
well, yeah, yeah,
But he always tells me, obviously, the silent black triangles and stuff like that. And I always see the idea of this in your work. Such a distance to it in some respects, but there's still this kind of basic slender cigarette, very Nubian. There's also this Nubian thing going on. Is that just explain that to me a little bit?
yeah. Well, I think that's kind of what it is. I love that whole kind of. I think that the whole sort of cigarette thing and the way that is coming through is that kind of nostalgic kind of 50s 60s
Yeah.
kind of, there's a guy called what's his name, Robert McGuinness, who did a lot of the old kind of Bond posters and things like that, and I've been really into his work sort of recently.
Right. Okay.
And just the style, just the way, I mean, it's very kind of loose, but they're very kind of, very elegant, and I just love that whole kind of like way that he paints, and I kind of wanted to sort of introduce some of that into my, because there's a lot of kind of, you know, you could say sort of elegance to some of it, but it's that kind of, it just adds to that whole kind of retro sort of over.
It is that retro. I mean, it's a horrible word to say, but I will say retro future. But I do like, and I think, to be honest, you know, as a newer artist, I'm not going to say, because you are old school. You go back from a graffiti artist point of view, which we'll get into in a minute. But I do think that, you know, we you know, being on the shoulder of giants, as I always say to Lee Quinones, you know, I found myself on the shoulder of giants coming out of New York to look at all these guys. But that influence is mutual as it steps down as we go through the situation. You think about Zachy D. You know, I think about what Zachy's painting now, as opposed to what the old graffiti writer Zachy was painting. And there's very innovative stuff what he's doing. I mean, even
Yeah.
the Mexican nachos the other day, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, absolute legend, Zachy, and it's been a real kind of pleasure sort of painting with him recently.
For the audience that doesn't know, Zachy D was part of another one of our artists that we really love, that we had a lot of trouble getting his work to the gallery. It was trapped in Italy. We couldn't get it out, which is Motu. And Zachy D was part of the Chrome Angels, along with a guy called Pride. I'm not sure who the other interim members were, but they were the three main honchos.
Yeah, Scribbler, was it Scribbler, the other one?
Scribbler, yes. But I think that Zachy, we later had our connection with the record industry because Zachy worked at a record shop, Black Market Records, for a very long time. But how was your, you know, how was your connection with Zachy D? How does that?
Do you know what? It's just been a kind of recent thing, and I would say probably just chatting over the last probably coming up to 2 years now, just appreciating each other's work. And what I've really liked about Zachy is just for one, is his plain just ability just to do the stuff that he does, and you know, an all freehand, absolute, complete master of what he does. But it's that kind of way of turning it and allowing himself to try all these new different ways of, you know, turning letters and changing letters and just putting a different kind of just a different view on it, really, you know, and just because it, you know, if you look at some of his early work, it's just incredibly, you know, amazing. You know, it's some of the traditional graph stuff, if you like, but it's that kind of, you know, just that kind of pushing the pen a little bit, and I think that's why we like painting with each other for that reason, you know, because we're teaching each other different things, and I sort of turn up there with a lot of emulsion and a brush and stuff, and it's kind of, he quite likes to sort of get that influence from me, and it's pushing him to do different stuff as well. So we're all the time we're learning off each other, and
No Man is an Island.
fun.
I think it's good for you to paint it. I think No Man is an Island. It's very good to have a buddy to be able to paint with, especially when I go through the innovative years of doing that. I think our old push for next year is you've got this new work now. Obviously, we spoke about fluorine, and it's Florian or fluorine. And the other pieces that I've really found fascinating was the kind of black guy with a hat, this style of headdress, which I found really fascinating because there's something really tribal about it. Even though it's set in the future, I do like the idea of almost this kind of like, I don't know, it's just another version of Mad Max. It's just a different future, urban future. Am I touching?
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, it's that kind of, and it all goes back to the kind of stuff I think that influenced me from the off, really, and that whole kind of dystopian future, you know, things like, you know, Blade Runner, Akira, that kind of stuff was all, you know, it was really big in terms of what you know, fascinated me, and still does, and still will always do. And I think there's always a you know, that will always be there. That message will always be there. You know, there will always be this kind of raw lived in sort of future that, you know, that we're always trying to kind of create in terms of what it looks like. And yeah, I think it will always be that kind of main driving force for my kind of my work, really. And I think the tribal thing, you know, and I think spiritual and things like that, it all comes from that whole kind of graffiti way, you know. It's that kind of culture, you know. It's the whole kind of communal culture and being a kind of in a tribe and that sort of thing. And I think all those kind of messages kind of just bond together to make this one piece. And there's a lot of stuff going on, and you know, it's difficult kind of to nail it into one kind of message, really. But there's influences pulled in from everywhere.
Are you working from home, obviously, or do you have a studio? Do you have a space?
I've got a space. I've basically got a space at home now, rather than a studio. So it's really good, and it's allowing me to just sort of have a few pieces on at one time, because that's kind of where I've always wanted to get to, and not spend so much time, and just, or maybe just, you know, just very loose, quick pieces as well. And that's the kind of the next stage for me, is to go a lot more kind of loose, not so tight, and maybe mix it with some of the, you know, the harsh lines and detail.
I think living in the hood for me as a young b-boy, putting plastic down on the floor always sent out the wrong message when people come back to visit me. It was always the idea of a room full of plastic. You think, come in, stand up on the floor, it's fine, it's great. You know, I think as a graffiti artist, always having a paint room, one of those things that I always had. I never did not have a paint room.
Yeah, I think it's important, definitely.
Later in the year, we're going to obviously try to push and switch out your stuff. You've got some new stuff that's on the way to us.
Yeah. There's 3 pieces I'm working on at the moment, which they're all work in progress, and yeah, they're looking, you know, as I want them. So hopefully they'll go down well in the gallery, and it'd be good to see them sort of all together up there. I mean, the gallery's great, and I've got to say, you know, I'm really honoured to just be part of it, really, and I'm just looking forward to the day of actually getting out there and experiencing.
Yeah, it's been so many people who are going to come to the gallery, and we're like, oh man. You know, in the end, I end up painting the train, you know, on my own, which was, you know, just me and Jex, and it was originally going to be me and Saturno. It was going to be me, Saturno, O'Deeth. It was going to turn into whatever it was. But I'm just really, you know, it's been great rediscovering with all of my great friends around the world that I love and admire with this space. But for anyone out there, you know, Epod is a really up and coming artist, contemporary artist. He's an old school graffiti writer, and the apple doesn't really fall far from the tree. But a lot of his work that he's doing, I'm really happy with. It's got a future retro feel. It's something that's slightly ahead of the curve, which sometimes frightens people. But I think when you see it in context, when we get the rest of his work, we'll be able to have a weekend of where we can show his work out and get a little bit more in depth to him on that.
Well, the only thing I haven't mentioned is one of my biggest influences back in the day. You know, obviously the Bible, which was spray can art, Future World Machines.
Really?
Oh my God, what a piece! Yeah. You know, yeah, and you could probably see.
Let's talk about that then before you go.
No, I think, you know,
there's another artist who swears by that piece. And for an audience out there that doesn't know what Mr. Epod, Mr. Bacon is talking about, it was a piece on 5 10 by 8 by 4 panels, 5 of them, and it was for the main piece at the gallery in Wolverhampton, my first solo show, of which I was late for. And I remember coming in with all these kids sitting on the floor in the gallery, all their legs crossed, and I was sweating, thinking, shit, I've got to draw out the dome.
Yeah, right.
It's freehand. So I had to do the 20-foot line, and then I had to do the dome. and this is without any projections or anything. And of course, for me, the concept was anything that passed through the dome changes color,
Right.
which I got really early on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was also with a paint called Omnipack, which was
Right.
a thing that I'd mastered and I'd finally got colors in my own cans.
Yeah.
I'm pumping them in into my own cans, and it was a nozzle that could paint sideways and flat.
Wow.
Which not many people realise that was a paint that I had, and it was a company called PPG Paint, based in Warsaw, that could allow me to mix colours and put them in.
Wow.
I mean, so I created colours like Pussy Purple, Luxury Lavender. I had some really great colours that I'd made for that piece.
Right. Okay. Wow.
Look at some of the foaming and stuff coming out of the drains, and the kind of chroming of the drains. It was real spitty.
I spent a long time looking at that piece when I was younger. A long time, and it kind of had, you know, all of those kind of influences that I had. You know, these guys, the sci-fi painters and things like that. And I'm looking through this magazine. Yeah, you know, obviously you got letters and, you know, writers and stuff like that. And that come on. And I was like, so there's a guy actually doing that kind of thing on a wall. Now, hang on a minute. This I got to sort of, and I think that sort of triggered something definitely back in the day. That whole kind of, I've not seen anything like that before, you know.
But there was this great kid, Chris, who was drawing characters, and we were always he was always drawing the most amazing characters. Chris got this character in a chair. So the whole idea of the alien in the chair, you know, with his head back and showing his whole chest plate and this thing, you know, it was. And there's a piece in Long Lee which was the front elevation of him, was with the kind of round eyes. It was this idea with the thing and the little planets in the background. And of course, I was just as influenced by Foss and what was the other fella you mentioned?
Mobius. Was it? Or Sid Mead?
It's like two-tiered name. We mentioned Palmer, not Palmer.
Roger Dean.
Roger Dean. Yeah, of course, I was very influenced by that. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those pieces that I think Future War Machines was it was a strong message.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be innovative, and we always do them. I think it was kind of like my Terminator.
Yeah.
As a piece, you know, Terminator as an audio piece was Terminator.
Yeah.
And that was my Terminator, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, well, thanks for touching on that. And
no, pleasure. I had to get it out of the system and tell you, you know, it's up there with something that's ingrained in my, you know, influences.
Just as one creator to another, I've always felt that there is something about your work. If you were to wrap it around high density foam, as cubes and triangles, and paint them, and actually put them together with metallic bars so you can stick them together, I think there might be something in that.
Yeah, well, to be fair, a lot of people have kind of said, you know, you should do sort of 3D stuff, you know.
Well, I think foam's very easy to get cut and very easy to do. Fabrications of foam and hard foam, and actually just canvas on a roll and just folding it and gluing it and wrapping it and you know, I think it's something you should look into, man.
Definitely something that's kind of in there. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I think
thank you so much.
Pleasure. And again, thank you. It's thanks for the welcome to the gallery, and like I say, it's looking amazing, and can't wait to get out there.
Yeah, man.
And get the stuff to you. I think you'll like it.
Well, I'll bring it on and send me those pictures, and also don't forget those frames. Right, I'll see you later, Tim. God bless you, brother.
Cheers,
peace out. See you later.
Bye-bye.